There is a question that no human being can escape. A question born in the silence of the early morning hours, when your eyes are open but the world seems closed. A question that spans generations, cultures, and languages, yet remains without an easy answer, without quick comfort, without an immediate solution. What path are you walking? Not the physical path, not the road of stones or sand that your feet tread upon, but the path of your soul. The invisible journey you chart with every choice, every word, every moment of silence where God seems distant and the weight of life feels too immense to carry. There is a day written in the heavens, a day that the prophets announced with trembling lips and tears in their eyes. A day that the Son of God himself described not as a threat, but as a reality every soul should know. A day called the Final Judgment. And before you close your heart, thinking this is just another sermon of fear, of condemnation, of fingers pointed at your flaws, stop, breathe. Because what you are about to hear is not about terror, it is about love. It is about the incredible mercy of a God who before judging taught the way. When heaven falls silent, it is because God wants to be heard in the stillness. And today, in this moment when your soul sought this message, heaven is falling silent so that you can hear what you need to hear. Not what is easy, not what is comfortable, but what is true, what transforms, what saves. Come, the path starts now. If you also seek answers in the deepest places of the scriptures, if you want to understand the mysteries that transform pain into faith, then subscribe now and turn on the bell. Because every day, a new revelation awaits you. Step back in time, not centuries, but millennia. Place yourself in the heart of a dry, golden, sacred land, first-century Judea. The streets of Jerusalem smell of spices and dust. Worn leather sandals strike the ancient stones as crowds jostle in the narrow alleys. In the center of that world, a man in his early 30s sits on the Mount of Olives. Around him, the disciples, simple men with calloused hands and perplexed hearts, approach with a question that still echoes in the depths of every human soul today. They ask, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus, with those eyes that saw not only the present but all of eternity, does not look away. He does not change the subject. He does not soften the answer. He speaks with clarity, with compassion, with the authority of one who knows the beginning and the end, because he is himself the Alpha and the Omega. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, he describes a scene that transcends any painting, any sculpture, any poem ever created by humanity. A scene where the Son of Man will come in his glory, all the angels with him, and sit on his throne of glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him, not some nations, not just those who knew the law or attended the temples, all nations, every soul that has ever breathed the air of this earth, you, me, those who came before, those who are yet to come. This is not a poetic metaphor for teaching purposes. This is the most solemn declaration the lips of Jesus ever uttered. And it begins not with condemnation, but with a separation, like a shepherd separating the sheep from the goats, with wisdom, with precision, with a love that does not ignore the truth, but embraces it completely. But what is it that distinguishes one from the other? What is it that causes some to stand on the right and others on the left? This is the question we need to answer. Not tomorrow. Not after life gets better. Now. Because the path you are walking today is the very same path that will determine where you will be on that day. True faith is born when human hope dies. And perhaps you have already reached this point. Perhaps human hope has already died within you in some area of your life. Perhaps you have prayed and silence was the only answer. Perhaps you have waited and the waiting felt endless. If that is the case, this message was made for you. There is a tension that exists in the heart of every human being who tries to take faith seriously. A tension that is not easily resolved, that does not disappear with a memorized verse or a repeated prayer. It is the tension between what God promised and what life delivered. Imagine a woman named Miriam, not the prophetess of the Old Testament, but an ordinary woman of the first century. A widow, 2 small children, a worn tent on the edge of the city. She heard about Jesus. She heard that he healed, that he fed multitudes, that he raised the dead. And she believed, with the simple, desperate faith of someone who has nothing left to lose. She began to follow the way, to serve where she could, to give what she had, which was not much. A piece of bread here, an extended hand there, a word of encouragement for another widow even poorer than herself. And years passed, and life did not get easier, and the nights remained long, and her children grew up facing the same stones in the path. And in many moments Miriam looked at the sky and asked with all the honesty that only suffering produces, "God, where are you? Do you see me? Is this path I have chosen the right one? Because it does not feel easy. It does not feel glorious. It does not feel anything like what I imagined when I said yes to your call." And the silence answered, not the silence of abandonment, though it felt that way, but the silence of love that cannot be understood with the ears of the moment, only with the eyes of eternity. Why does God allow those who sincerely follow him to still face so much pain? Why is the path of the righteous not a road paved with visible blessings? Why does faith so often feel like walking in the dark, where every step must be taken without seeing where your foot will land? This is the question the enemy uses as poison. He does not need you to abandon your faith all at once. He only needs you to start questioning if the path is worth it. He whispers in moments of exhaustion, "Look at what you sacrificed. Look at what you lost. And what did you gain? Where is God now?" The enemy bet that you would give up. God bet that you would resist. And God's bet is not based on naivety. It is not based on ignorance of what you are facing. It is based on something much deeper, the knowledge of whom he planted inside you before you were even born. On the certainty of a seed that, even buried in the driest soil, carries within itself the capacity to sprout. The crisis of faith does not begin with a denial. It begins with a silence that keeps growing. First, you stop praying with the same intensity. Not because you no longer believe, but because it feels like your prayers only reach the ceiling and come back down. Then you start comparing. You see others who apparently do not care about God living comfortably without the storms you face. And the question begins to take shape in your heart, like a mist turning into a cloud. In first century Judea, this question had a specific face. It was the face of the Pharisees, men who knew every letter of the law, who fasted twice a week, who tithed even the herbs from their gardens, men who, on the outside, looked like the perfect model of devotion. But Jesus looked at these men and saw something others did not see. He did not see holiness. He saw whitewashed tombs, white on the outside, full of death on the inside. Not out of cruelty, but as a diagnosis, because the greatest danger to the soul is not the obvious sin, the one everyone recognizes and many are ashamed of. The greatest danger is the appearance of faith without the substance of it. And here we reach the heart of the mystery of the final judgment. The scene described by Jesus in Matthew 25 does not separate people by their doctrines. It does not separate them by their religious affiliations, by how often they went to the temple, or by the knowledge they accumulated of sacred texts. The separation, that final, eternal, irreversible separation, is made based on something surprisingly simple. What you did with what you saw. I was hungry. Did you give me something to eat? I was thirsty. Did you give me something to drink? I was a stranger. Did you welcome me? I was naked. Did you clothe me? I was sick. Did you visit me? I was in prison. did you come to me, and those on the right, those who will receive the inheritance of the kingdom, respond with genuine surprise. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you something to drink? And Jesus responds with one of the most transformative sentences human ears have ever recorded. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And the faith that saves is not a faith that merely knows about God. It is a faith that allows itself to be transformed by God to the point of seeing God in others. This is the distinction. This is the thin but absolutely real line that separates the path of life from the path of religious illusion. It is not a line of perfection. It is not a line of flawless performance. It is a line of direction where the heart is genuinely pointed. Ashes are the altar of those who still wait. And perhaps you feel that what is left of your faith is only ashes, that the fire that once burned with intensity now seems reduced to weak embers, almost extinguished by the wind of disappointment, that your initial enthusiasm has been eroded by the difficulties of the middle of the journey. If so, know this: embers are still fire, and God does not need a massive flame to do his work. He needs only a soul that, even when exhausted, still says yes. The path of the final judgment does not begin at the moment of judgment. It begins now. It begins in every choice you make when no one is watching. It begins in the space between the selfish impulse and the decision to love. Imagine the desert, not as a vague metaphor, but as a visceral reality. The Judean sun is unforgiving. The sand is as fine as gold dust, but burns like live coals. There is no shade. There is no visible water. Only the relentless heat and the silence that seems to scream. It is in this desert that souls are revealed. Not built, revealed. Because the desert does not create what you are. It discovers what was always there, waiting to be seen. The desert strips away the layers of comfort, of distractions, and of comfortable illusions about yourself. And what remains when everything is removed is who you really are. Jesus spent 40 days in this desert, 40 days of silence, of hunger, of trial. And then the enemy appeared, not with a terrifying appearance, not with the roar of a beast, but with seductive reasoning, with unanswerable logic, with proposals that seemed sensible. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Why suffer hunger unnecessarily? Why not use the power you have to alleviate suffering? And Jesus responded not with magic, not with demonstrated power, but with the word, with the truth that cuts deeper than any sword. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Divine revelation did not come in the moment of power. It came in the moment of accepted weakness. It is the same in your life. The moment you are in your desert, when the numbers don't add up, when the relationship falls apart, when the diagnosis arrives, when the dream dies, that moment is not the moment of divine abandonment. It is the moment of revelation. In that empty space, in that golden dust of destroyed expectations, God asks a question, not about what you did wrong, not about the mistakes you made, but about what you still believe, about whether in the depths of all that darkness there is still a spark of trust. He did not punish you. He called you into the whirlwind. And in the whirlwind, the voice of God is not the thunder. It is not the earthquake. It is not the fire that consumes. The voice of God is that still, small voice that you can barely hear, which requires absolute inner silence to be perceived. The voice that says, I am here. I have always been here, and the path you are walking, even when it doesn't seem like it, is the path that leads back to me. The final judgment is not the surprise of a distant God discovering what you did in the dark. It is the inevitable encounter with a God who was present in every moment, every moment of pain, every moment of choice, every moment when you decided to love even without the strength to love. You who are here until now, you who recognize the voice of God in the silence, do not let this message be lost. There are many souls seeking this same light. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, because what comes next may change your perspective forever, you who lost everything at some point in your life need to hear what I am going to say now. Not with the ears of fear, not with the ears of accumulated guilt, but with the ears of a soul that, even though wounded, is still standing, still here, still listening, and that in itself is already a miracle. The final judgment that Jesus describes is not a cold sentence handed down by a distant judge who never experienced human fragility. It is the judgment of someone who came to us, who touched leprosy with his own hands, who wept at Lazarus's tomb, who felt real hunger, real thirst, real abandonment. That abandonment that makes the soul cry out to heaven without receiving an immediate answer. Jesus knows your desert because he was also in the desert. And that is exactly why the practical application of this truth is not a list of rules to follow. It is an invitation to a transformation of perspective, to seeing the world through the eyes of one who was loved first and therefore has love to give. Think about your week, not the ideal week, but the real week. The moments when you passed by someone and didn't see them, when someone needed a word and you were too busy with your own concerns to notice, not as an accusation, but as an invitation, because each of those missed moments represents a lost opportunity, and every future opportunity represents a path that opens up. The faith that the final judgment reveals is not the faith of grand gestures, spectacular conversions, or miracles that fill auditoriums. It is the faith of a cup of water given at the right moment, of a hand extended without expecting recognition, of a look that says to the other, "I see you, you matter, you are not alone." This is the language of the kingdom, and it does not require wealth, talent, or position. It requires only presence, attention, the willingness to step out of the center of your own story long enough to enter the story of another. You who carry guilt for things that can no longer be undone. Listen, the final judgment is not only retrospective, it is also prospective. God does not only look at what was, he looks at what you are becoming, at the direction your heart is pointing today. And if you are here today, listening, seeking, desiring to align your path with the path of the kingdom, it is already happening. The transformation has already begun, not with noise, not with a spectacle, with the same silence with which a seed begins to break its shell in the darkness of the earth. But there is a dimension to this truth that goes beyond the individual, that extends beyond your walls, your family, and your circle of acquaintances. The call of the final judgment is also a communal call. In first century Jerusalem, the communities of Jesus' followers were distinguished in a specific way in the social fabric of the time, not by pomp, not by wealth, not by political influence. They were distinguished by care. There were reports recorded by outside observers who were not followers of how those communities cared for their sick, welcomed travelers, and fed the hungry. See how they love one another, outsiders would say with genuine wonder. Not because love was the growth strategy of the movement, but because love was the natural consequence of people who had been touched by a truth that transformed them from the inside out. When you begin to live in light of the final judgment, not with fear, but with awareness, something changes in the way you see your neighbor. The beggar on the corner stops being a social problem and becomes a face. The difficult co-worker stops being an obstacle and becomes a soul with a story you don't fully know. The family member who hurt you becomes someone who was also hurt. This shift in perspective is not naivety. It is not about ignoring healthy boundaries. It is the profound wisdom of one who understands that God's judgment is merciful to the merciful. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy, not as a bargain, but as a spiritual law. As an echo, what you cast out returns. And there is something more, something that theology sometimes forgets to emphasize with the force it deserves. Jesus does not say that those on the right were perfect. He does not say they committed no mistakes, that they had no moments of weakness, or that they did not fail in other contexts. He says that they loved, that when they saw the need, they responded, that the impulse of the heart was toward the other, not toward their own comfort. The holiness that the final judgment recognizes is not the holiness of perfection. It is the holiness of direction, of the heart that, even while stumbling, continues walking in the right direction. And you, who perhaps have stumbled more times than you can count, are you still walking? Then you are still on the path. There is a fundamental difference between two types of suffering: the suffering that destroys and the suffering that transforms. And the difference does not lie in the intensity of the pain. It lies in what you do with it. In the biblical tradition, there are characters who passed through the fire and came out with the smell of smoke on their clothes, but they came out. There are others who, faced with the same furnace, refused to enter and lost something much more precious than physical life. They lost the opportunity to witness the miracle of the divine presence in the midst of the fire. Because the miracle of deliverance is not always the absence of the fire. Sometimes the miracle is the presence of a fourth figure in the midst of the flames. And this is the truth that the final judgment wants to teach us before it arrives. Do not wait for the day of judgment to discover who God is in the fire. Discover it now. In the fire you are already passing through, in the trial that is already consuming what does not need to be preserved, so that what is eternal can be revealed. The fire of suffering does not burn your essence, it burns the shackles. There is a powerful parallelism between the narrative of the final judgment and the narrative of creation. In the beginning, God created by separating. He separated the light from the darkness. He separated the waters above from the waters below. He separated the dry land from the waters. Separation was not destruction, it was revelation. It was the way of making visible what God had conceived in the heart of eternity. The final judgment is the ultimate separation, not an act of cruelty, but the final act of creation, where God definitively separates what must remain from what cannot remain in the presence of perfect holiness. And you can prepare for this separation not with anxiety, but with attention, asking yourself today, what am I cultivating? What am I feeding within myself? Are the choices I am making building someone capable of entering the presence of absolute love? Or are they building someone who, before this love, would feel only the discomfort of one who never learned to love? The pain you are carrying today, if you bring it to God, if you allow it to be construction material and not just the weight of destruction, it can become precisely what God uses to prepare you for that day. Ashes are the altar of those who still wait. And from the ashes, God has a habit of creating things that no human eye could ever imagine. We have reached the most sacred moment of this message, not the moment for more information, the moment of encounter. If you can, close your eyes for a moment, not to escape the world, but to enter the silence where God speaks. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Bring to the surface of your consciousness everything you carry, the doubts, the fears, the unanswered questions, the long nights, the prayers that seem to go nowhere. And then gently let it all settle at the feet of a presence greater than any problem, older than any pain, more solid than any uncertainty. The final judgment is not the end of your story. It is the revelation of the story that God has always been writing with you. And the chapter you are in now, as difficult as it may seem, is necessary. It is part of the larger plot. It is the moment when the character you are is being formed for the ending you cannot yet see. Pray with me, with the words that the heart understands, even when the mind cannot articulate them. God, I do not understand all your ways. I do not comprehend all your silences, but I choose to trust. I choose to believe that the path I am walking, even when it seems wrong, is in your hands. Teach me to see my neighbor through your eyes. Teach me to love with a strength that is not my own, because mine is already exhausted. And when that day comes, may I be among those who loved, not perfectly, but genuinely, not without stumbles, but without giving up. Amen. The path you are walking is known by the one who created every stone upon it, and he does not walk behind you, observing from a distance. He walks before you, opening what needs to be opened, closing what needs to be closed, and holding your hand in the stretches where the ground seems to disappear. When heaven falls silent, it is because God wants to be heard in the stillness. And in this silence right now, what are you hearing? If this word touched your heart, if you recognize that God speaks in the whirlwind, leave in the comments just one word: I will wait, so that others passing through the same trial may know they are not alone. And if you wish to continue this journey through the sacred mysteries, subscribe now, turn on the bell, and allow each revelation to find you at the right moment. Because God is preparing something you have not yet seen. In the beginning was the Word, and in the end there will also be the Word. Not a cold sentence, not a bureaucratic decree, a living Word who knows your name, who counted every hair on your head, who was present the moment you were formed in secret and woven in the depths of the earth. The final judgment is the ultimate encounter with this Word that cannot lie, that cannot be corrupted, that cannot be influenced by appearances or arguments or impressions carefully constructed over a lifetime. Before this Word, there will be no masks. There will be no rehearsal. There will be no second chance to make a good impression. There will be only what you were, what you chose, where your heart genuinely pointed when no one was looking and comfort called in another direction. And for that reason, not out of fear, but out of love, the invitation is this: live now as you will live forever. Do not wait until the day of judgment to be who you want to be before God. Be that person today, at the market, in your home, in the silence of your room at 3 in the morning when the weight feels immense, in the moment when someone needs you and you also need help. True faith is born when human hope dies. And from the ashes of this dead hope, God has built every story of redemption the world has ever witnessed. He built bridges over chasms. He built songs in the midst of captivity. He built resurrections on the third day when everyone had already closed the chapter and gone home. The enemy bet that you would give up, but you are here, still listening, still seeking, still waiting. And that means God won the bet. The path you walk has a destination. Not the destination that fear imagined, not the destination that suffering suggested in the darkest nights, the destination that a father prepared for a child who, even while stumbling, never stopped walking toward home. He did not explain the suffering. He revealed himself in the midst of it. And on the day when heaven and earth pass away, when the thrones are set and the books are opened, when every soul that has breathed the air of this earth is gathered before the glory that human eyes have never seen. On that day, the only thing that will matter will not be how much you knew, it will be how much you loved.